Well, welcome everybody to the Wilmot Institute's, what day is this? The fourth day that we've been doing live broadcasts from our booth 410 at the Parliament of the World Religions. And today I have JoAnn Borovicka from North Carolina here with me. She is a Wilmot Institute faculty member and also the author of a very interesting book, which I think we'll talk about in a second. And she also was involved in preparing a program here at the Parliament, which we'll also talk about. So JoAnn, welcome again to the Wilmot Institute's booth. You've been a regular visitor, and I'm delighted we're able to interview you finally. And Nikki is already joining us, you see.
I can see that. Hello,
people are coming in on this live broadcast already, and it's kind of nice to see that. Let's start with talking about your book, about the Bible and the Baha'i approach to the Bible, because I think that's really, to me, kind of a breakthrough. And so tell us about the book.
Sure. So the name of the book is Light of the Kingdom, Biblical Topics in the Baha'i Writings. And what's unique about it is that it takes the structure of the Bible, that is the Hebrew Scriptures as well as the Christian Testament. It starts at the beginning in the book of Genesis and pulls out high-profile topics and then explores Baha'i writings on those topics. So, for example, we have in the book of Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, in that verse, God is a topic. And so then the question is, well, what do Baha'is believe about the nature of God? And so then we have just short excerpts of Baha'i writings that describe the Baha'i theology on the nature of God. And then another topic in the book of Genesis is the act of creation. So then the question is, well, what do Baha'is believe about how was the world, the universe created? And so it continues then throughout Genesis and the rest of the Old Testament and into the New Testament, the Gospels, the Epistles, the book of Revelation, book of Acts, and anyway, pulling out very interesting topics and then exploring Baha'i teachings on those.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think we gave the title of your book. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, it's the title.
Start with that.
Okay, the title is Light of the Kingdom, Biblical Topics in the Baha'i Writings. And it was published by the Baha'i Publishing Trust. It's available through them, also Amazon Prime and other booksellers.
All the various places. Yeah. When, last year?
It was published in 2016.
16, that's right. I think what particularly interested me about the book was the whole approach you took to, well, it was Exodus and such, where you were talking about the symbolic as well as the sort of literal meanings of those texts, the historical meanings, or if there are any historical meanings, actually. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't build that up too high, but also the more symbolic meanings of the text. And can you explain that a bit?
Sure, I'd be happy to. One of the bounties of the Baha'i writings is that they address and explain many of the meanings of the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, and so the book explores this. And specifically in the book of Exodus, there's a lot of research that has exploration and research that's come out over the last specifically 20 years that has strong theories suggesting that the Exodus story that we find in the biblical text isn't exactly the way that the Hebrew tribes came to that area. And there's also, of course, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but there's also a good deal of evidence of a different way that the Hebrew tribes came into that area, sort of a slow incursion, and then very interesting theories and incredible theories about how these stories came to be to unite these diverse tribes who came into the area in a very different way. Short of a time machine, we'll really never know exactly what happened. Yeah, but the unfortunate thing that occurs with this is that because of the research is so credible, that some people who hold onto these stories in a very literal fashion become discouraged and even lose their faith if they think that perhaps, these words are not literally true. So the bounty of the Baha'i writings, one of the many bounties of the Baha'i writings, is that They do explain and explore things in their spiritual perspective. And so the text is of great value in demonstrating spiritual principles that are true today, spiritual guidance that we need to follow today. And for Baha'is, really the power of the word is in its eternal universal meaning. And if somehow were to be found that, no, this isn't literally true, it wouldn't affect or destroy Baha'i reverence for that scripture, and certainly wouldn't be a test of faith.
Sure. One of the things that I learned when I was studying the Old Testament, that was what it was called in the course I took. It wasn't called Hebrew Bible, I think. Was that if you compare Joshua and Judges, you find that the cities that are supposedly all destroyed in Joshua had to be destroyed again in Judges, which suggests that they really probably weren't all destroyed in the first place, but it was actually this gradual incursion of the tribes into the infiltration and the conversion of the existing people who would have spoken the same language and would have been, after all, their distant cousins, since they had all gone down to Egypt from that area 2 centuries or so earlier. So it's very interesting, this whole question of the Israelite conquest of Judea and Sumeria, shall we say.
Yes.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the Wilmette Institute courses. Now, you've been involved in both the Old Testament course, or Hebrew Bible course, the New Testament course, Isaiah, I think Revelation, you were involved in that one. I don't remember whether you did Judaism and Christianity, though. Of course, the Judaism's coming up in December, and Christianity comes up next year. So what can you tell us about those courses and the approach that we're taking in those courses?
Yes, so I love the Wilmette Institute. There are incredible freedoms to studying in this particular venue. When a person signs up for a course, of course, the fee is very nominal, and there's assistance if that's not affordable.
We can cover the whole thing.
Exactly. And so what you have is a very systematic way to study a topic that you're interested in. And you have a lot of freedoms. So the courses are divided up into sections that cover certain weeks. And so but all of the material is available to you at one time. You can work at your own pace. You don't have to show up at a particular time to have a course online. It is absolutely completely according to your own schedule. So if you're a night owl and 3 o'clock in the morning is when you like to do your reading, then that's when you can look at the materials and respond. And the courses provide you resources. These are readings, often videos, sometimes musical selections. There are considerations for those with handicaps. And so the material for studying the topic that interests you is already organized. You can and are invited to and encouraged to respond about, what touches your heart, what you see as most important, make connections, and the faculty and other students in that course can respond. And the Moodle software is what they call the Moodle software. It's very user-friendly, and the participants are from all over the United States and, in fact, all over the world. So it's also a good way to make friends and get to know people.
We have a team of 2 people, of course, who are doing our courses on Christianity, Judaism, and the Bible. And JoAnn is one member of the team. The other one is Ted Brownstein, which we interviewed him yesterday, I believe. And so it's a good chance to see your teachers if you're interested in studying those particular topics. And I must say, I've been delighted to work with both of you.
Thank you.
It's really been great. And JoAnn has been a real marvelous innovator in improving our courses in general, and especially these courses on biblical topics.
Thank you.
I've been very impressed by how our courses have increasingly been able to balance different approaches to the Bible, because to me, I don't know about you, but to me that's one of the most difficult problems with biblical text, is because they are very old. People don't know what they mean anymore. What I mean by that is that the culture has changed so much that something that made sense to people thousands of years ago, now you have to explain it to people for it to make sense, you know? And sometimes we're not even sure what the text meant, even, because there's some words that are so obscure we're not really completely sure what the words mean anymore. The meanings have changed so much. And then there's a whole question of how reliable were the historical records, and it goes on and on and on. But with Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha offering certain explanations of the spiritual meaning of the texts, that gives us, I think, it's a clue for how to interpret them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a model, an example of how to revere the text.
Yes,
it seems to me.
Absolutely.
And that gives us, I think, a different approach to these texts that can be respectful of the history, respectful of the cultural changes, but still make them relevant to us in a way that's not flaky, shall we say.
I like it.
Or off the deep end or something, you know? It's a very interesting and complicated balancing act, it seems to me. Wouldn't you say? Yeah.
It is. And when we look at the biblical text as art, sometimes that's helpful. Art can touch you in many different ways on many different levels, and everybody's perception might be correct. So, one of the questions is, what do I see in this verse? How does it touch me? How does it encourage my heart? So, if it's not relevant now, or if it doesn't help us move forward, what good is it?
Right. And I guess you could say an advantage in a way that we have in studying the biblical text is that, the Christian denominations have to sort of put all their eggs in one basket. In other words, if they're not sure what the biblical text means, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We at least have the revelation of Baha'u'llah and the guidance of Abdu'l-Baha and the revelation of the Bab to give our faith a direction, a sense of content, of purpose. So for us, the biblical text is an illumination. It's a further reinforcement. It's a deeper way of understanding what God does in history, and a deeper way for us to reflect about our own lives. But it's not, what's the word I want? It's not a desperate situation of, if we don't know what this means, we're stuck.
No, that's true.
For us, it's an important additional thing to revere.
That's
and
right.
to learn from.
Yes, and important also historical evidence of progressive revelation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is true, and I'm sorry I didn't mention that too, because as a historian, that to me is extremely important, that we can see how God works in human history over 4,000 years.
That's right.
From Abraham to the present.
That's right. Another factor is that we see in the Baha'i writings that often Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah, they discourse in terms of biblical texts. They quote the scripture, they refer to biblical stories, and in this way they connect with who they're talking to. So if it's someone who has a tradition, a biblical tradition, they speak in those terms. So it's interesting. It really, I think, demonstrates the importance of Baha'is today being familiar with these stories and with these verses, so that we can, like the central figures, speak to lovers of the Bible in their own language.
Yes, that's a very good point.
When the apostles went out and they spoke, they said that they spoke in tongues, they spoke to people as they understood. I think that's one of the meanings.
Yeah.
You speak to people in terms of the traditions that they are used to, in the metaphors and symbols or historical facts that they are familiar with.
Help them build on their own foundation that way. Well, tell us what you've been doing here at the Parliament.
Oh, having a lot of fun, meeting fabulous people. It's so easy to make friends, really, and to start up an engaging conversation. On Sunday at early in the afternoon, myself and along with 10 other collaborators, it was sort of a big project. We did. Can I hold this? We did a workshop called Amazing Faiths Interactive Workshop on Interfaith Dialogue. And so what we did was we shared a process for engaging in interfaith dialogue that's been used really all over the country since about 2007. It was initiated at Rice University and called Amazing Faiths Dinner Dialogues. Now, this is something that we do in Greenville, South Carolina, where I live, and also the Greater Milwaukee Interfaith Conference does do these dinners, actually several a month. And then,
that's a lot.
Yes, it is. And so the point of the dinners is to have a group of about 8 people together. And I'm saying dinner because that's typically the scenario, but it could be an event without food. but to have about 8 people together with a moderator.
With a moderator.
And it's a diverse religious group. And the magic is in the guidelines. It's an exercise in appreciative listening. So the guidelines are that first we have questions on cards. Everyone will get a different question right before they respond to the question. So they're not there thinking about what am I going to say, but just listening to the person who's responding. The questions have to do with one's spiritual experience. So it's not about explain your religion, but the questions are more like, what is the place of prayer in your life? Or when did you most experience the presence of God? How has your faith changed from childhood to this point in your life? So it's questions that touch on one's spiritual experience. And the guidelines or ground rules of engagement are that you have 4 or 5 minutes to respond, depending on the venue. Say 5 minutes to respond. And during the time the person is responding to their question, the other people do not interrupt. And when that person is through speaking, there are no comments and there are no questions. So it is strictly listening.
Interesting.
Yes. And you'll be astounded to when you have a heart kind of question and a group of friends or strangers even who are going to listen to you for 5 minutes. It can be very surprising even to yourself what arises. And it's a very strong learning experience for the listeners, because it's a way, generally what people come away with is a sense of unity and oneness. And when we're really talking about our spiritual experience, we're talking about the same thing. So what we did was we introduced that program, we made the guidelines clear, and then we did a breakout session into many groups. And students from Furman University who were trained as moderators. Thank you to Dr. Claude Stelting, their religious professor. They moderated these small groups, of which there were many. And we gave everybody an authentic experience of this appreciative listening exercise.
So basically you ended up doing a whole bunch of these
Exactly.
dinners, as it were.
Exactly.
And now people can take the idea home to their community.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And the resources, what they would need to train moderators or whatever is made freely available. Okay. So we were just wanting to share this wonderful procedure.
That's a great thing to do, and a great way to strengthen interfaith relations locally, because people love to go to each other's houses and eat and sit on the couches in the chairs in the living room and talk.
That's right.
It's very a personal, intimate experience.
It is, and very safe, because you know that it's not a debate. There's no opportunity for debate. You don't have to defend yourself.
Right.
It's strictly listening, and
that's interesting. That's
quite
really
a luxury, actually.
Yeah,
it's
that's
a luxury.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, good.
Well, thank you so much, JoAnn, for this time.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming by the booth. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Parliament, and thank you again very much for serving as faculty for the Wilmot Institute. You really made some great contributions.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Go.